Okay, so in this video, we're just going to keep going through building out some more wireframes of the screens of this app that we've been putting together. So you can see here, I've put up the storyboard again, my low fidelity sketches of each of the screens of this app. We've done the login screen, we've done the home screen, and so I'm just going to continue the techniques that we've already looked at with wireframe.cc, and I'm going to go on to things like viewing a list of all the staff members, viewing a single staff member, etc., etc. So let's get back into it. So I'm back into wireframe.cc, and I'm just going to turn my grid back on because I had just turned it off in order to take screenshots and to do other things like that. And we're going to move on to another wireframe. So I'm just going to control click the main logo to open up a new wireframe over here. And while that's opening up, I'm then going to go through the same setup process that I used before. So I don't want a desktop wireframe, I want portrait mobile or portrait phone. And in my settings, doesn't really matter which one we turn on, but I do want snap to grid turned on, and as long as my grid size is the same, honestly, I'm pretty happy with that. And of course, I'm going to go back to one of my previous wireframes. So I'm going to go back to the first home screen wireframe, Control A, select everything, Control C, copy, go back to my new wireframe, Control Shift V, paste in place. And that's going to give me the majority of my shared components for this particular screen. And once again, just looking at the storyboard I put together, we can see that the home screen and the rest of the screens share a lot of the same components. So they're all going to have the same top left logo. They're all going to have the same top right profile account icon. They're going to have the same bottom tab navigation. Now the title might be a bit different because on the home screen, I did put the title fairly large and in the center. We might just move that off top left a bit more to give more room for the actual content of the screen. But those shared components, copy and paste them. Don't waste your time reinventing the wheel or re-declaring all these different shapes. So I don't really want these buttons, so I can delete those. If I do need them later anyway, I can go back to my previous wireframe and copy and paste them again from there. And as I mentioned, this title, it doesn't really matter what I do with it, but I'm just going to change it to be left aligned, because if we have a really short title, so for example, staff, I might not want that to be centered in the middle of the screen. And I might also just move that up a little bit, so it's giving us a little bit more room for content. Now also, like this bottom tab, I did make the icons really quite large. You might want to reduce the size of those icons, but again, the design part's not really what we're after here. So I'm going to put together two variations of a listing of staff members, which are going to be very, very similar. But the reason I've got two variations is because if you're logged in as a manager or some sort of privileged user, you're going to be able to do things like adding, editing, and deleting staff members. But if you're logged in as a regular unprivileged user, as in a regular staff member, you're not going to be able to add new people or edit existing people or delete people. So we can, and again, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to put in two separate wireframes, one for regular staff, one for managers. The only difference being that there are going to be some extra buttons and links for adding, editing, and deleting. So yeah, so what I'll do is I'll create the one that does have the buttons first, because then all I need to do is copy and paste everything and delete a few buttons, and then I'm done with the other one. Now, one little thing that I'm going to do here as well with these screens is I'm actually going to change the staff icon to be the tomato color and the label also to be that tomato color. Now, the reason for that is just to show that we are currently on basically saying that staff is the active item which is being shown here at the moment. As in, someone has tapped on staff, they are now within the staff section. Now, you can also go back to your previous wireframes for the home screens and make that the active icon if you wanted to show the client or whoever that that's the current screen that they're currently on. It's just a nice way of keeping track of where you are within the application and what particular menu item you have activated. Again, you don't have to do it, but it was the same as when I tried to show that the account or profile icon was currently activated in this particular wireframe. So what do we want for this staff listing? On my storyboard here, it was basically just have a title of staff, and you can say like, all staff or something if you want to. We'll put in a little image placeholder for a staff profile photo, and then a few details about the staff member. So it might just be the name, someone's title, and their department, or their name, an email address, and a phone number, whatever is useful to find a staff member. And then some edit and delete icons in there as well. And to show that this is a continuing list, I might also chuck a scroll bar, a vertical scroll bar down the side, just to make it seem like there are a lot of different items without having to put in a huge number. So I might just put in the scroll bar first. So I'm just going to draw a big long vertical rectangle and change that to be a vertical scroll bar. And you can change this to whatever size you want and to position it wherever you want, but that's going to be fine just sitting over there somewhere. In this particular case, because I'd want this to be a fairly specific size, I would probably end up turning off snap to grid and making it a little bit skinnier if you just wanted to save a little bit of space. And then you can turn snap to grid back on after you've resized it to exactly where you'd like to see it. But yeah, I mean, things like scroll bars, because they're so small, or at least one of their dimensions is really small, you might want to be quite specific about where this is placed. So for each staff member, we're just going to have an image placeholder for their little profile photo, and I'm just going to make that a square. Now, I don't think I mentioned this before, but when you're drawing one of your boxes, you can also hold the shift key then to make sure that it is going to be a square. So the height and width are kept in proportion. So image placeholder for this staff member. Then next to their image, we're just going to have something like the person's name over here. And for this one, I'm actually going to type in, I'm actually going to put in text for this. If I just put in placeholders for all the different values, I know my client or whoever is going to ask me, what's this? What's this? What's this? So I may as well just say, you know what? I'm just going to call it person name, and then people aren't going to ask me what it is because it's really obvious what it is. So I'm just going to put in a person name, copy and paste that down. So I just did a Control-C, Control-Shift-V, and then I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller, and I'm going to say this is someone's title or position. And again, like, I don't really care what values you're putting in here. If you need an email address or a phone number or whatever, you put that in. So in my employee listing, I'm just going to put down, look, this is John Smith. They're the head, the manager of whatever, and their department is going to be sales or something. So that might be enough for someone to find this particular person later on. So that's pretty much it, except that for each person, I did say that I wanted to be able to edit and delete this person as well. So over on the right-hand side somewhere, I'm going to put in a little square and mark it as an icon. And if I type in pencil, we'll probably come up with a few, but a pencil is going to be a very, very common icon for this. So anyway, so I'm just going to put in a pencil for edit, and I might make that, well, I might need to adjust the size a bit more specifically in a second, but I'm just going to Control-C, Control-V that again, and change this one to, if you search for delete, you're going to come up with some sort of bin. So I'm going to put in a trash can or a bin with a cross on it. You might want to put through just some sort of X or something. Again, it doesn't really matter. And if you do want to specifically control things like the size, remember you can turn off snap to grid, then select your items and make them, a bit smaller than they otherwise would have been. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to move these off to the side somewhere over here. Keep them fairly aligned. There we go. So now I've got one person locked in. They've got a name, they've got a title, they've got a department in there. And that's the structure that I would then want to just basically copy and paste a few times to give the idea that there's going to be a list of people. And optionally, you might also want to go and put in a divider, a little line. So, and again, these are a bit of a pain to work with. You've got to click around to find wherever the line actually is. They're always a pain to select. So the line looks like it's down here, but the line for some reason is actually much higher. It's there. So when I finally select the line, which often I'll find is easier by clicking and dragging, I will expand it out so that it actually wraps around where the line is. So now when I click on the line, it selects the entire line. I don't know why it is like that. Anyway, I'm just going to double click on that and change it to, I'm changing the fill color, but there is no fill. So I need to change that to the border color. And now I can change it to a different color. There we go. And I might make it a bit thicker. There we go. So I've got one person in there, one staff member. So I can use my old copy and paste trick where I'm just going to click and drag from the bottom right corner back up again to select all those items. Again, you can just use a shift click. So copy and paste in place, Control Shift V. And in this particular case here, you might notice that I'm moving those using my keyboard, not with my mouse. Now you can use either, but what I'm doing is I'm using the keyboard and I'm pressing the up and down arrows, but I'm also holding down the Shift key. So if you just press up and down, you end up moving in small increments of just 1 pixel or 2 pixels or something. When you hold down Shift and you press up and down, you usually move in a increments of 10 of something. So normally up and down will move 1 pixel up and down, but if you hold Shift and press up and down, you'll move 10 pixels up and down instead. So if you're moving, quite a long distance, it's much easier to hold down Shift and then to move around your, in our case, our wireframe. So there we go. So I've just copied that a few times, and I'm also just going to paste it again down here to give the impression, now this is completely optional again, but just to give the impression that they keep going past where the footer is. And as I said, this is optional, you don't have to do it. But I'm just going to select this line and remove it, and the department, because we don't need that, and maybe even this delete icon. And obviously it's not a great look having things like, this image over the top of the footer, because that we would want that to disappear behind it. We can change that just by ordering differently. So what can we do with that? If we go and click and drag, if I click and drag very carefully just to select all of my bottom tab navigator icons and labels, and then shift click the bottom tab background as well, like the entire footer region. Now, this would have been easier if I had grouped it, but what I can do here is I should be able to do something like changing the arrangement of the elements, and I should be able to bring those items to the front. Now, if you don't want to do that because you might have some sort of group that you might mess up, you can also just select this item and this item, as they're the only ones that are troublesome, and say arrange, and then send to back, whichever one it is. There we go, send to back. So these items which are currently on the top layer, we're just going to tell them go right to the very back or the very bottom of our layers. And so now you can see that those two troublemaking elements have been sent right to the very back. And so the bottom tab sits over the top now. So that's almost it. We've got 2 more things to change. So at the moment, I can't add a staff member. And so it's pretty common at the top of a list of staff members or whatever it is that you're dealing with to have a button that just says add. So somewhere over here, and I might just turn my snap to grid back on for this. Over here somewhere, I'm just going to go and put in a little button like this. Round its corners a bit. And I'll just put in plus add. There we go. Now, if you don't want any particular colors on it, you can leave it like that. If you want to make it look more like one of your buttons from before, you can, of course, change its fill color and change its border color and whatever else you want to do. It doesn't really matter, right? But the point is that you've got a little button there that now says, this is how we can add new people. And you might notice as well that you can't change the text size of one piece of text within a particular element without the rest of it. That was a bit confusing. But in this particular case, I can't change the font size of the plus without affecting the rest of the text as well. So if you wanted to do that, you would just have to layer something else on top and put an icon on top of the add button. Yeah, so, and in fact, I'll show you that just in case you wanted to see. So if I want, this text to be kind of smaller for the button, but I know that I want to have an icon in here somewhere, I'm just going to manually space all of that text across to allow for the space of the icon. And then I'm going to go and put in an icon. So in here somewhere, I'm just going to manually say, put in an icon, search for add, and we'll have all these kinds of little add icons in here. Or of course, you can search for plus as well. So you'll come back with the same or similar results. So there's a little plus icon, and I can drag that into the middle there. Now you can see that because of the snap to grid, it's not going to work very well. So I can just turn that off and manually adjust this. Oops. Whoops, I ended up breaking it. Oh no. That was not a very good example. Because I accidentally pressed enter inside my button text, I ended up pushing all of the text onto the new line, which meant that wireframe.cc decided that my button needed to be bigger, and then I tried to undo, but it didn't undo the thing that I wanted it to undo. Anyway, I have a little add button, so that's great. Again, this would be a good time to do grouping if you wanted to play around with that. So you could grab the plus icon and the button and just group the two elements together if you're wanting to do that. So the very, very last thing is that I am just going to create or try to create an illusion of a scrollable area here. So I'm just going to try to create maybe a color kind of like that, no border, a little scroll bar or like a scroll indicator. There you go, look at that, that's not too bad. Now this one is obviously much more detailed, and you definitely don't need to do this, but I actually find that sometimes little details like this are quite helpful if you're wanting to indicate like it's some sort of scroll position. Because obviously if you look at this, you go, oh, right, if that's page 1, then there's going to be like, basically 2 or 3 other pages of results in there somewhere. But yeah, but normally we don't stuff around that much with wireframes. So there we have it. So there is another wireframe done for a staff listing. So showing a summary of all of the staff members in a list, only showing, just as I said, a summary, so just their title and department and name and image. This view is for a manager or a privileged user because we can add, we can edit, we can delete. So I'm just going to copy this wireframe after saving a copy of it. I'm going to copy this wireframe and duplicate it into a non-privileged user's version. And in my beautiful Word document where I'm keeping track of all of this stuff, I'm just going to go through and say staff view all. And this is going to be for unprivileged users. Oh, sorry, this is for managers. So add, edit, delete. and you know, whatever the wireframe link is. So always keep track of that. I want to reiterate that it's really important, I think, that you keep track of stuff like that. Sorry, this is not part of this at all, but I just need more space with my headings. So I'm just going to quickly update those headings. Need a bit more space. There we go. Okay, so we've got the view all page, but this is for the manager view. And then, of course, you can go and take a screenshot if you so desire. I'm just going to duplicate the wireframe first, and then I'll take a screenshot of both of them. So in my new wireframe, same process, make it a portrait phone. We can see that the grid's already correct. So go back, Control-A, Control-C, Control-Shift-V, paste in place. I don't want the add button. I don't want delete. I don't want edit. And so, oops, so all you're doing is very quickly and easily just deleting those. And so we're looking at this, and now we can see that this person can read, but they can't edit, right? They can't edit, they can't delete, they can't add. So this is a read-only view of the previous wireframe. So again, you can really quickly just save a copy of that. In fact, I might just copy all of this. I mean, you guys don't need to worry about this. This is just for me keeping track of everything and showing you how I would, you know, look at this. So I'm just going to say that this is just a read-only view. So now that we've done that, we can go and take a screenshot of our two wireframes again. So this is the unprivileged regular staff view. So I'm just going to turn off the grid, take a little screenshot here, go back to my Word document. This was the read-only one, so I'll dump that in there. And then, of course, there's the manager's view. So I'll go back over here, again, turn off the grid, take a little screenshot, and then squirrel that away in my Word document over here. So we can just keep repeating this process over and over again for, you know, each of the screens of the wireframe, trying to keep track of them all. And you can even see so far that, you know, I've ended up with quite a good little collection of my wireframe documents, which is not being viewed next to each other, of course. But you can see that I've got all these different wireframes in here, which is starting to really spec out quite well what this application is going to look like for, again, the client, for developers, for whoever needs to look at them. So the next screen that I'm going to put together is going to be just viewing the details about one of these particular staff members. So if we go back to the storyboard here, so looking at this view one screen, and then we can get on to adding and editing. And I'll just quickly put these together. So just like before, go and create a new wireframe.cc document. Go and change its defaults from whatever it's gone back to. I don't know why it keeps on turning show columns and doing weird stuff with the grid. In fact, this time it's done some very strange stuff. It set the grid back to all its defaults. Anyway, so I'm going to send my grid back to its defaults, turn off snap to grid, turn off show columns, all that kind of stuff. I'll go back to my first staff listing screen, grab everything, copy, and then paste it in place over here. And straight away, I'm going to rename this to staff details so that I can at least start to tell the difference between these screens. And I'm not going to need this add button, at least as it stands now. So I might just, I'll keep the button because I'll use it down the bottom of this form. But I'll just change its text to something else. But I'll leave it there as like a template that I can use later on. So this screen is going to look quite similar to our view all staff listing, but I want the image to be bigger. So we've got a slightly bigger view of the person. We can still have their name and position and department and stuff over here, but then the rest of the details I'm just going to display as label value. And you can put in whatever details you want. So all of this stuff down here, I want to remove. I don't need the scroll bar in this case. I don't really need the dividing line, and all of that stuff can go. This stuff I can leave. I'm not going to need the icons either, but things like the person name, the position, the department, all that kind of stuff is quite useful. So I'll leave that there. I'll make this image bigger to fit this space. So there we go. We'll do something like that. Now at this stage as well, you may want to turn on snap to grid so that when you are resizing things, for some reason I couldn't select my image just then. There we go. So the image is a bit bigger. We've got the person's name in here. We've got their title. We've got their department. Yeah, I mean, you can make this stuff, whatever size you want it to be. So you guys can go nuts with this. And then I'm just going to take at least one of these and I'll put it over on this side. And so what I'll do, as I was saying, I'll put in like a label value kind of pair. So if we're getting someone's email address, for example, we can put this one in as a label, and we could leave it left aligned or right aligned or whatever. So just to show you that you can do this a bit differently, you could right align these things and then have a matching left aligned value over here. So something like this. So testperson@company.com. And we could basically just take this value here and keep copying and pasting it down for as many different values that you wanted to see. So obviously we could have like email addresses, we could have phone numbers. You can put in whatever else you wanted. So if you wanted to see someone's salary, you could put in, notes, whatever other details you wanted to see in here. Secret notes only seen by management. There you go. And all of this stuff, I might just move up slightly. Whoops, I missed all those ones. There we go. So again, I'm not too concerned about all these, the exact layout and everything that we've got here. But I will take this button and move it down the bottom. So what buttons do I want to see here? So if we're viewing the details of a person, and I'm thinking that this is like a management view, right? The reason it's a management view is because we can do things like see someone's salary, which is probably not generally public. And we've got secret notes appearing for each person as well. So the two things that they might want to be able to do with someone, you could have an add person button, but inside viewing someone's record, we'd want to be able to edit that person and we'd be able to delete that person. So I'm just going to put in two buttons down here. So one over here for edit and one over here for delete. There we go. Now I don't actually know if those things are centered, but they're pretty close to if they're not exactly centered. And again, if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 buttons or whatever, and you want to show that one has some sort of primary styling and another one has secondary styling, you can use Tomato in order to do that. So if you go and edit your shape and do things like just change, the fill color and then change the text color, you can at least give some sort of impression that one of these buttons is the primary action and then the other one is something else, but you can use color to mean whatever you want it to mean. Just try to make sure that you're consistent about it. Okay, so there you go. There's another screen done. It doesn't need to be that difficult. Once you've got a whole lot of stuff already done, these wireframes, it's not a huge amount of effort to pump out a new screen. And again, that's part of the point of using software like wireframe.cc. It should be easy. It should be quick. And if someone comes in and says, oh, well, we can't see this particular information, well, okay, we can add it. We can delete stuff. We can move things around really, really easily. Remember as well, if you're trying to fit more information in, don't feel like you have to be limited to this particular size as well. Remember that you can just come down, if we can get to it, you can come down and change things like the height of the canvas. So if you can't get the little grab tool at the bottom because I've got this rectangle sitting right at the bottom, you can come down and say, well, I need a lot more room, so I'm going to make this something like 700 pixels high or longer, 1,000, 2,000 pixels high. Now, obviously, it doesn't look like a regular phone anymore, but you're trying to show all the content which could appear on that phone screen. So, you're not trying to cram everything into just one single viewable screen. Feel free to just extend this outside. Anyway, so just a little aside for that. Again, for staff details, there would be two different views for this. So when we're viewing one staff member, what I've done is I've done the view one view where we've got the full information, including the secret notes and the salary, but we could also have just a summary of one person where it has a bigger photo, it has their email address and phone number, but no salary, no secret notes. So again, that's going to be really, really easy for us to do. We're basically just going to go and create yet another wireframe. Grab everything from here, paste in place over here. We don't want the ability to edit and delete. We don't want notes and salary information, and basically everything else is the same. Now you could reorganize this. You could make it, fill out the screen more fully. I don't really care. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. So there we go. So we've at least got two different views for that. And just for consistency, I'm just going to go and take stock of these extra views. So this is going to be view one, and this is the there's the staff only read, sorry, the staff read only view. And then there'll be the manager view. So my manager view has this URL, done. And my staff read-only view has this URL over here, done. So really easy for us to keep track of what we've got going on. And again, you can take screenshots, but I'm not going to bother with it. So the next couple of screens that I'm wanting to put together will be for editing a staff member and then also adding a staff member. Now, editing a staff member is going to be pretty similar to this screen here because we're dealing with all the same information, right? Like if you're viewing the details about a staff member and then you go and edit the details of a staff member, it's going to be the same data, except that it's going to be in an editable form instead of being read-only like it is here. So basically everything on here is just text details, like labels on a page. It's read-only, it's output. But what we want to do is basically to take this information and wrap it in a form. Now, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to create a new wireframe over here. But just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to ignore the image for editing and adding a staff member. Now, normally you would need to represent it by something like an image upload control or like an image URL at least or something like that. I'm just going to ignore the whole image thing for now because how you would do that on different mobile apps is something which I don't really care about at the moment. So when I'm doing editing staff details, I'm going to do things like name, title, department, email, phone, salary, notes, and that's it. I'm just going to leave the form there. So if I go and copy all of those details and head over here and change this back to what I wanted again, paste in place, and in here I'm just going to change this to edit staff details. I'll remove the image and I'll actually just copy this structure back up again for the department and the title and the position. So, so this was like the title or position. I'll just make it position in here, if I can type correctly. Come on. So department, position, and then of course the person's name. So the reason I just went for the bottom ones was quite simply that they already had the structure of the data that I wanted to see there. So they had all the formatting that I wanted. Now, at this stage, if you wanted to, you can go and put in, actual details for the person. I just put in, the placeholders before. But of course, you could say, oh, this person is within sales or something, and their position is, manager or whatever. So feel free to, if you want to put in actual details, you can. Either is going to give the impression of what we want here. So if I go and select all that, and I'll just move it up a bit. And there we go. And again, like, alignment and stuff, I don't really care about any of that stuff. I'm just going to leave it as it is here. Now, this is going to be a form, so I'm going to need to change a couple of things. So first things first, I'm going to change the buttons down the bottom. So if I'm editing someone's details, the two buttons are probably going to be either save the details or cancel the changes, right? So the default action I'm going to put in as save, and the alternate or secondary action I'm going to put in as cancel. And you can see that the colors kind of back that up, that, the person's supposed to go and save it, but they can also go and cancel as well. But the second thing is that I want to show that these are form fields as well. So I'm going to turn off my, it's already turned off. The snap to grid has been turned off. I'm going to turn off all of my helping, snapping to anything. And I'm going to go and draw a box around each of these items. So going right out to here somewhere. So I'm going to put this in a little box. And you can round corners and, do whatever else you want. But very importantly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the formatting of this box, not adding text to it, but I'm going to change the fill color to be transparent so that I can see the text behind the box. And we can change the ordering of it all as well, but I'm just going to do it this way. And you can change the border to be, whatever color you want. But straight away, it at least gives the impression that this is some sort of form field now, instead of just being a label. So just by wrapping it inside a rectangle, it at least seems like it's something that's editable. And if I go and select this rectangle and then paste it down here, so all I did was copy, paste in place, and then shift down 3 times. So it just moved down by like 30 pixels. So I'm going to have consistent positioning of all of these things. So same thing again. And then for this last one, because it's a notes field, I'm just going to make it a fair bit bigger. So we'll do something like this. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. So straight away, we're giving this very, very clear impression that all of these different form fields are form fields, right? So that they're text boxes or whatever they happen to be, and that these things are buttons. So we've made it look like a form. So again, what I want to do is to communicate clearly enough that the client's not going to turn around and say, what are these things? Are these just labels again? Well, no, it's pretty clearly a form now. And the last thing that I would want to change in here would be things like a drop-down list. So this little one over here for the department, and possibly the position as well, but something like a department is probably going to be from a predefined list of items, right? And so instead of just putting in a regular kind of box or text area or whatever, you could also draw over the exact same area and say put in a combo box, which is their terminology for a drop-down. And again, we can change, whoops, that was the fill color. You can change the border colors and everything to whatever you want as well. And I'll just move the original box out of the way, as in I'll delete it. And I'll move this one down. And my color choice was terrible there. Whoops, that's a fill color again. Anyway, something like that. Oh no, that's a fill color. Keep falling for the same trap over and over again. Anyway, there we go. So all I've done is I've changed the what was just a simple rectangle before to be a little drop-down list instead. That tiny little triangle there makes a huge difference in communicating what something is. So it does seem like a small change, but I very highly encourage you guys, if something is supposed to be a drop-down list, a combo box, you know, a picker, whatever you want to call it, then put a little arrow there, put a little down arrow. That communicates something quite different about the user interface. So do think about that. Same as if you had, you know, a control which was supposed to be something like a range control or like a slider, then go and put in a slider, because that's very different to having something like a text box sitting in the middle of a form. So, you know, whatever form fields are available in here, go in and use them because they are useful for communication. So that's edit. So edit staff details is done. So I probably don't need to do anything else with that. Again, you can, you know, go down and take note of this. Staff, edit staff details. Put in whatever the wireframe is. You know, and then you're done again. So then the last one would be adding staff. So add staff. And this is possibly the easiest of them all. And the reason is that edit to add is an incredibly simple change. The difference between editing and adding is that when you load up a form for editing a person, the person's details are loaded into the form. When you load up a form for adding, it's the same form, but it's empty, right? So all we have to do is basically to delete all of the values from these fields. And then that's it. We've got our add form. Maybe change the label on this button, obviously change the title, but that's it. We're going to be done. Now, for some reason, wireframe.cc didn't load, but now it is. So same thing for the last wireframe. Change it into a portrait phone mode. I'm going to copy everything from edit staff details and paste in place over here. I'm going to change it to add staff. I'm going to change this little button down here just to say add instead of save, because, I mean, you can leave it, but add is a little bit clearer that, yes, I do want to add someone into the database. And then really, as I said before, it's just about going through and deleting all the values of these form fields. Now, remember, though, that the way I did this, because I put the form field or the rectangle over the top, I can't just click and delete, because that deletes the form field, not the value. So what you might want to do is to go through and say, you know, shift select all of these different shapes here, which are all the form fields, go up to a range and say send to back, like what we did before. Now when you go through and click select, you can see that I'm selecting the values, not the form fields. So all you need to do is to go through and delete the values that you don't want, and then we're done. So I'm going to leave the department in there because it's a drop-down list, and so there will be one value selected by default. It's either going to say, please select a department, or it's going to be sales, or whatever the default department is. And that's it. We don't need to change anything else there. So we've got add staff, we've got an empty form, we've got an add button instead of save, and we are done. So again, you can go through and, take some screenshots of these things just to make sure that you've got all of your details being saved. Definitely make sure that you've got all of your URLs for all of these different wireframes. So edit staff details, this one over here. View one staff in read-only mode. So viewing a summary of their details, not the full detail set. And the same screen, but looking at the full manager view, so showing the full staff details, not partial details. And that's it. So that is a set of however many wireframes that was. So I think we've got 9 different wireframes in there. We've got a login screen, we've got a home screen, we've got a home screen showing the little account or profile area. In fact, I should just show these as I go along. So login screen, home screen showing the profile area. We've got the full staff listing in manager view where we can add, edit, and delete. We've got the staff listing in non-manager view where it's read only. We've got the staff details in manager view where we've got secret notes and editing and deleting. We've got the same view but without the edit delete options and without the full set of information. We've got the edit page, which is only for managers, and we've got the add staff page, which again is only for managers. And remember, I never actually said this, but there is no screen for delete either. So if you think what's likely to happen over here when you say delete, or when you're over here and you click delete, you're probably not going to be taken to a separate screen. Sometimes you are taken to a screen that says, hey, would you like to confirm the deletion of this particular person? But usually it's just going to pop up some sort of confirmation box and say, hey, you're about to delete this person. Are you cool with that? So I'm not going to wireframe a screen for deletion. That's it. That's the end of this tutorial on wireframing. So hopefully now if you look back on the whole tutorial, you will know a bit of a difference at least between storyboarding, wireframing, design concepts, and prototyping. And hopefully there is some sort of distinguishing sort of features and you can get them distinguished in your own head. Remember, that is my personal view on what those terms mean, but hopefully it came across okay. You've had a little bit of an example of what one very dodgy storyboard might look like. And of course, we've also learned how to use wireframe.cc, an online free web-based tool, to create some wireframes. And we've translated what I've got in this sketchy storyboard across into some wireframes as well, which are obviously a lot cleaner, a lot more formal, and are able to be handed over to your client. The other thing which wireframes have over storyboards in this particular format here, these are not that easy to edit. I can edit this by erasing some and redrawing it again, but it's not as easy to edit as my wireframes, because I can go back to the original designs and say, oh, well, all of these images need to be gone, or they need to be larger or smaller, or this needs to be a different field, right? Or we want different icons. I can obviously come back in and edit this really, really easily. And yeah, so there you go. So you've got a few different ways of communicating a user interface design concept. We've looked at creating wireframes, and hopefully now you can have a better experience about designing apps and about communicating with non-technical clients, with developers, with designers, whoever you need to, because things like wireframes are a perfect communication technique in terms of trying to communicate where this app is heading. They're very good at defining scope, because if the screen's there, it's there. If it's not there, it's not there, right? So they're very good at determining what's in scope and what's not. They're very good at determining exactly what information or data needs to be there. And of course, we can go and create things like APIs and things based on this as well. Because if I can see the output and it's like, oh, that's what the app needs to do, I can go and create an API to back that up as well. So there you go. Hopefully this has been useful, and good luck with your wireframes.